Okay, hi guys, welcome to another video. Today, this is Pitstop Head talking H1Z1 and DayZ Standalone. Yes, and the reason being, H1Z1, I've just done a stream on JP Plays channel. Now JP is obviously a YouTuber. He's got a fair number of subs, and they let him into their studios up at the SOE offices in San Diego and sat him down next to Jimmy Wiz, senior designer on H1Z1, and they played the game for a couple of hours, and I've sat down and I've watched it because obviously, you know, I'm a big DayZ player and I want to see what H1Z1's got to offer at this point in time. Okay, so I'm saying that now. This is a warning. I am just looking at this game as it currently is, bearing in mind they're still developing it, and DayZ obviously is still in development, but is out there being played by thousands. So, okay, I'm just going to bust right into it because I just want to cover whole points and give you guys an update, tell you what I think. So I made some notes as I was watching because I wanted to make sure I covered all bases. And first thing first, I was looking at the character, and as I talk, I'm going to put some images up on the screen here. The character is really heavy. He's heavy build. You look at him, he's kind of Neanderthal in a way, kind of like a caveman. His joints are really long and gangly. I don't know whether they're going to remodel the main character. I should imagine that would take quite a bit of work. I don't know. But it looks awkward, not quite as natural as a DayZ character, but yet, you know, he's pretty intense. He's obviously survived a zombie apocalypse, so he's pretty tough. And this character looks that way. I don't know how I feel about it, and it kind of separates the character a bit, whereas the DayZ players seem very normal. They seem like normal people, and I guess the DayZ Interactive have their capture where they can actually copy the movements of a human body with that costume they wear. What the fuck it's called, I can't remember. Anyway, so that's my first point. The character, not that great. What I did like, though, was the amount of zombies they've got going on in the game. The towns are full of zombies, and they come in hordes at you quickly. If you get trapped by one, then you're probably going to die. They're pretty vicious. Their damage has been ramped up a bit, they were saying on the channel. And that looks great. I mean, that's scary. They are scary, and I would say that they're more scary than the DayZ zombies, because the DayZ zombies, to a certain extent, have been dumbed down because ever since player versus player became more sort of dominant. But no, I like the zombies, and they look okay, and they're introducing slight variations now. They just had one zombie before, but now I think they've got two, maybe three. Didn't quite see that. One thing that's really good for H1Z1 is the inventory system that they've put in. I really like the way it looks. It's smoother, it's crisper. Sometimes I find with the DayZ inventory, the character is glowing a bit. You know, even when I've got the gamma down. But I still like the fact that the DayZ inventory is kind of there, it's bigger, whereas the H1Z1 inventory and crafting system, which I'll get onto in a minute, but the inventory looks great. I like the way that looks. It feels smooth. It doesn't take up the whole screen, which is, I don't know. We'll see how that works when I'm playing it. Now, they've also reduced the amount of pistols and guns in game compared to DayZ Standalone. So we're looking at just pistols largely, maybe some heavier weapons. They were talking about this. They were talking about where they could find guns, and Jimmy Wiz was talking about what they call the governor's house, which is obviously direct taken from The Walking Dead, and there you can find some pretty good equipment, but they're rarer. It's a rarer spawn, so there's less guns in the game. I don't know how people are going to react to that. Maybe there's more of an emphasis on crafting your own weapons, but guns definitely play a smaller part in H1Z1 at the current stage. But the guns that are found are pretty good. They're okay. They sound okay. There's a machine gun up, an automatic rifle, a semi-automatic rifle up, and it looked good. Sounded okay. Nothing special. The modelling definitely isn't as good as DayZ Standalone. DayZ looks beautiful. It's kind of very crisp and true to what each item is. no matter how they interact in the world. Whereas the H1Z1 looks kind of, it looks bloomy, it looks kind of softer, the edges maybe not as detailed, although arguably at times the H1Z1 world looks fucking amazing. It really does look absolutely excellent. The world is spooky, atmospheric, and we came across this scene where there was a bridge and cars, and you got a real sense in H1Z1 that the world was really infested and in pieces, whereas in DayZ there's less of that going on in the design of the surroundings. It's much crisper, and I guess that's just how the world has evolved model-wise, and maybe the legacy that evolved from a non-zombie environment in a sense with Armour 3, Armour 2, but the H1Z1 world definitely is pretty spooky. Okay, now going inside the buildings in H1Z1 has shown that there's a lot of stuff you can loot, and they've got like a timed check where you get a little timer as you're searching each item, and most of the items seemed to be searchable, which is much more than what you can say about DayZ. DayZ, the items you find, the loot, are on things rather than in things. But having said that, the H1Z1, with those items, they're not actually visible, and you never actually see them in game, so there's no object there as such. They're just assets that have been attached to the item, so they're inside the item, so you don't know there's something there until you actually searched it. I don't know what's better, but one thing that was pretty poor in H1Z1 is they've got the glow on. What I mean by that is if you scan your cursor over an item, it will glow if you can search it. And as far as I can say, that really isn't that's not real, is it? I mean, that doesn't happen in real life unless I've missed something. So for me, that makes it move away from the reality, the fear factor that is generated by something that feels very real. So I was not impressed with that, and then in fact JP on the video was talking to Jimmy and saying, oh, you're going to get rid of that, and that they're in two minds as whether they're going to or not, so we'll see how that works out. So zombies appear to be harder, which adds that fear factor that we were talking about earlier with the number of zombies, so that makes it even harder. And they have this thing, when JP was killed, the camera zoomed out and you could look down on your character as he's dead. And thinking about it, I didn't like the concept of that, because it's again disembodiment from your character. You don't just die, black screen. You actually see, and it takes you out of the game again, so you're less interactive with the actual environment and maybe less fearful. But it looked freaking awesome when you could see your death pose and the zombies around you. Really cinematic. So I don't know with that one, I'm unsure. I'd have to experience it. The death in DayZ is just pure brutal death, black screen, you are dead, and that just makes your heart jump out your chest. Whereas with this death scene, I don't know what effect that's going to have. We'll see. I love the way it looked, but I don't know whether that's going to distance you from the game. And another really cool thing that I loved in H1Z1 was on this streaming was that the zombies go for dead people. So if you die, the zombies still come on and they will try and eat you. So in a way, people could act as distractions in game, which will add to the role-playing factor. So if someone dies, zombies are still going for them. They won't immediately stop, recognise that person's dead, and then go for the other player. In DayZ Standalone, you get that. You die, zombies then lose immediate interest, and they'll chase after someone else. So the kind of the reality is that the zombies would go for that dead person. So that's definitely a tick in H1Z1's favour. You also start with an axe in H1Z1. So that was interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, because DayZ Standalone for so long you just start with a torch and battery, and that is it, and you have to find your melee weapon. But in H1Z1 you're ready to fight. It may be a conscious decision because there are so many zombies in the game. That might well be the case, but I don't know. Does it feel like cheating to you? What do you guys think? I don't know. Starting with an axe, maybe. Also, when you're using that axe, and they've incorporated a lot of crafting into the game already, you can you can swing it, and when you swing it really quickly. The movement looks unnatural in H1Z1, and they're talking about how the rhythm, I think maybe something to do with the clicking speed, or just the fact that they don't want to lengthen certain parts of the game. So I felt that looked particularly unnatural, but I could see why they would want to use that as part of the game. So the crafting is far more complex. You get a little separate tab in your inventory, and you can go through and you can learn things. So you learn skills, and you discover new ways of using certain items. And what that means is you've got little boxes you can move stuff into. You'll probably see on the screen here that it then opens up the possibility of learning particular skills. So it's much more involved. And if it's a case of surviving against the zombies rather than other players, then this side of the game might well have much more validity. So it will be interesting to see how that evolves. And I quite like that. I quite like the idea of developing skills and having great ability to make more complex items. And you take that, apparently, if you die, that's the only really thing you take on with your character if you move on to the next level. So that's great. And you can break items down, and there are already animals in the game, deer and wolves, and you can take the pelt and use that, and you can break clothes down and cloth down, so you can then recraft them using it to other things. Now obviously in DayZ Standalone you can make rags out of your t-shirt, so there's a trend going on there, and it's understandable, you can rip things up. So but for H1Z1 it seems to be more important, so they can break things down much more easily. And in fact they're working more of that into DayZ Standalone, with logs being broken down to sticks and whatnot and stuff like that. So that's a really interesting part of the game, and both games are evolving that system. But H1Z1, Jimmy said that he's particularly interested in that, and that they want to have that as a kind of more advanced, and I sense they want it to be more advanced than DayZ Standalone. Another thing that is in the game is there are some additional actions that you don't find in DayZ Standalone. So you can just jump generally, which isn't really introduced as part of any of these zombie survival games so far as I'm aware. And someone's probably going to tell me I'm wrong, but you can jump, and it does this really weird kind of gesture with his hands flayed upwards. I just thought that looked really crap. But the idea of jumping is, for me, it's quite a good thing to have in the game. Some purists don't like it. Well, that's what they're doing. They're having jumping, and then you can also push away if you press Q, and you can push away and almost like combo actions. So push and then fire at the zombie. So I like the sound of that. Whether I remember to use it or not, being used to using DayZ controls, I don't know. But that's something you'd have to learn. And to be honest, it might prove to be really interesting to be able to do that, and you can see that happen. And yeah, no, I quite like that concept. It's quite interesting. They've also got, as far as gestures is concerned, they've got an effective ragdoll system already in place in the game, whereas DayZ Standalone just adding that in at the moment. And their ragdoll's very similar to DayZ's one that's now been implemented. So that's a general trend for games, though, using a ragdoll system like that. So that looks good. And when you're driving around, yes, you can drive it. They've got vehicles in H1Z1, a limited amount as far as I can see so far. You can hit those zombies and knock them flying in their ragdoll positions, which is very amusing, and the blood splats out. So that's another good factor. The blood arguably does look a bit more realistic in H1Z1, whereas DayZ is very kind of localized to these spots that kind of squirt out. Although I like both. You know, you can tell the bleeding. And in fact, the best in DayZ Standalone, when bodies are lying down and blood's pouring out of them, they kind of pour down. I like that effect. That looks good. Although sometimes it comes through ceilings, and we don't have to talk about glitching because we know all about that. As they got towards the end of the video, you could see that there was starting to be questions appearing about forums and their communication. And so far, H1Z1, Sony don't have an actual dedicated forum. What they're using is their Reddit channel to focus people's responses, which is okay, but they're consciously very aware of potentially an aggressive audience. And DayZ Standalone, they closed they pretty much stopped using their forum. They kind of made it official, assigned someone to do it, and it became less of a centre for people to join in, and went more Reddit. So H1Z1 seemed to have learned from DayZ's mistakes, although I personally feel they should have their own forum. I feel it says, look, we're putting a space between us and our viewers, even though they're letting people test the game, which you could see JP doing on this video that I watched a few days ago. I mean, they're obviously allowing people in, but once they're in, you know, there's a certain obligation to be positive about product. So, and some of the things that were being said, I thought were overly positive, but not constructive. What I'm saying is not to be negative, but you've got to be constructive about these things. Surely that's the way it's going to help these developers, is it not? A really another interesting thing they finally got around to talking about was the kind of what draws zombies to the players, because that's an important part, bearing in mind that they try not to make this a player versus player game, and they've come up with a system where there's a negative heat that builds up around a player if they make noise, if they do actions, if they get involved in combat and whatnot. Obviously fire guns if they can find guns. So as the heat increases, it kind of touches more zombies, and then they're drawn towards the flame, if you like, and in that way you get the action keeps going. So it pays you well to not do a lot and keep quiet. So this system, it's a hidden system. You don't see it. The player doesn't glow red or anything. It's just how how the zombies can kind of detect you, like a scent almost. They're using bow and arrows as potentially the main projectile weapon, because you can craft those fairly straightforwardly. It doesn't take long to learn how to do that through the crafting system incorporated into the inventory, and you can kill people with headshots. That's what they said. Whether that stays in or not, I don't know. And talking about people, they also not talking about numbers on servers. Before they were talking about having these massive servers when the game was first talked about, but it doesn't seem like it's going to go that way now, and I suspect they'll probably have the same number of people on the servers as DayZ has currently, although they're looking to increase that to 100, 64 and 100, so they're saying that's very close. So in fact, I think maybe that they're testing it in experimental, or it's just gone live on experimental, I don't know. But the dream of 1,000 players on a server looks like it's far off to me. They're certainly not boasting about it, and it seems Sony boast about stuff a long time before they can actually prove it, and so they're not boasting about it. And so I don't know about the servers. I hope they get more people on, and the world seems to be bigger. They want to make it a much larger environment, but there doesn't seem to be any sign of that yet. And release date. You know, what is the release date? This free game. They keep talking about this free game. Well, actually, it's going to go into alpha, and it's going to cost $20 or £15 to buy it in alpha. And then prompted, how long is alpha going to be? JP asked Jimmy Wiz, he asked him how long is it going to be in alpha, and Jimmy just gave no indication whatsoever. As long as it takes, he said. So that could be a year, it could be 2 years, we don't know. Probably won't be, because it's Sony and they're massive, but it could be a period of time. People will be dying to play this game. There's a lot of hype around it. So most people will be paying for it, and then when it does come out, eventually is released, it's going to be free. That's what they're saying. But obviously they'll have a whole massive system around cosmetic items, and items they argue don't affect the game well, but in my eyes some of these items are the ones that people really try and search out in game, so it will take that element away from them and maybe take some of the gameplay out. So stuff like in DayZ Standalone, when you find a rider's jacket, that may be a really great thing for you, but some guys already bought it if you're playing H1Z1. So that largely seems to be how they're going to work it. I don't know, but there seems to be, the period is longer. What they've been talking about has obviously seemed they've learned some lessons. They've realised it's actually a lot harder doing what they're doing. which isn't a surprise. I'm not surprised. The surprise was when they came out and said, "Oh, it's going to be released soon," blah blah blah. But it's not. They're still working hard on it. They've got a massive team on it. I'm excited. I love some of this stuff that goes into this one. You know, the way it looks like. I can't wait to get to play it. And guys, SOE, if you're listening to me, Sony, if you're listening, send me a free copy. I love to review it. I review it really positively. I'm not all about DayZ Standalone, but I want to give this game a chance. This H1Z1. All the games add to this genre. I love this genre. Zombie survival. Okay, guys. So that is my summary of the latest video on H1Z1. Hope it was helpful. There's going to be a lot to come with this. I'm going to be following it on my channel here with more videos like this where I discuss the game with some stuff going on in the background. If you've got any comments, add them down below. You know anything that I've left out here, then just add it in. That would be absolutely spot on. And no, thanks for watching and listening. And if you're not subscribed already, then go ahead. I much appreciate that. See you in the next video.